So, you know when you are faced with a massive literal roadblock, right? Like, say, a giant boulder has just fallen right in the middle of the highway.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, your very first instinct is usually to look for heavy machinery. You want a bulldozer or maybe dynamite.
Right. You are looking for something with overwhelming brute force to basically match the sheer physical size of the problem in front of you.
Yeah, it's a completely natural human reaction. When you face a terrifying obstacle, you want a massive weapon.
It is basic physics, really. You know, a big obstacle equals a much bigger force required to move it out of the way. We are totally conditioned from childhood to think exactly like that.
We are. But what if that physics equation is completely backward when it comes to the actual, metaphorical mountains we face in our daily lives?
And that paradigm shift is exactly what today's deep dive is all about. Welcome in, everyone. Today we are unpacking a really fascinating set of Bible study notes by Mrs. Lee Carl.
Yeah, the study is titled, By My Spirit, The Power of Small Beginnings. And it zeroes in on the prophetic book of Zechariah, specifically chapter 4.
Right. And we want to establish up front that the stakes here are incredibly high for you, the listener.
Oh, for sure. Because it really doesn't matter if you are facing a literal mountain of a workload this week or an emotional hurdle that feels entirely insurmountable, or if you're just trying to live a sincere spiritual life day by day.
Exactly. These ancient texts actually reveal a blueprint. They show how everyday, seemingly insignificant actions can literally change the atmosphere around you.
Yeah, but to understand how we conquer these modern-day mountains, we first have to step inside this very bizarre, incredibly vivid vision given to a man named Zerubbabel.
Right, and the way this vision is introduced in the text really sets the tone for everything that follows.
It does. So, in the opening of Zechariah chapter 4, the prophet is woken up by an angel. And the notes point out how highly specific the text is about his state of mind. He is awakened, quote, as a man that is wakened out of his sleep.
Which means it's sudden, right? It's jarring.
Exactly. He is being pulled from his heavy, exhausted, ordinary reality into something entirely divine and just completely unexpected.
I always try to picture that exact moment. You know, he rubs the sleep out of his eyes, probably expecting to see like a battle plan or maybe a massive angelic army ready to help him fight.
Yeah, but instead, he sees this highly specific, incredibly ornate image. It is a candlestick, all of gold.
All gold, wow.
Right. And there is a bowl on top of it, 7 lamps and 7 pipes connecting to those 7 lamps.
So it's this vision of perfect, divine order. It is beautiful, intricate, and glowing with light.
It is. But the impact of that vision only really hits when you contrast that pristine golden imagery with the brutal reality that Zerubbabel is actually facing on the ground when he's awake.
Oh, yeah, because his daily reality is certainly not a pristine golden candlestick.
Not at all.
His reality is what the text calls a great mountain, standing right in his way. I mean, to put this in historical context, Zerubbabel was the guy tasked with rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem after the Babylonian exile.
Right, so he is not just building a house in the suburbs. He is standing in the literal ruins of a destroyed city.
The psychological toll of that, I mean, it cannot be overstated. He is looking at generations of rubble.
Yeah, rubble, and he is dealing with active political opposition, right? Sabotage from surrounding regions.
Yeah.
He has a severe lack of resources.
And perhaps worst of all, he is leading a population of people who are just deeply demoralized and exhausted. So that great mountain represents an obstacle so massive it basically blocks out the sun.
So for Zerubbabel, waking up to a vision of a fancy piece of metalwork must have felt like a cruel joke, honestly.
Right. Like, how does this help me? And I think we have all been there in our own modern context. It is like those moments when you look at a massive project at work or a terrifying health crisis and you just freeze up.
You are completely paralyzed by the scale of the destruction.
Exactly. It's one thing to see a golden candlestick in a vision, but how does an ornate piece of metal help a guy who is staring down a literal or metaphorical mountain?
Well, your confusion is actually shared by the prophet Zechariah himself. He looks at this intricate golden system and literally asks the angel, "What are these, my lord?"
He is totally lost.
Totally lost. And that moment of admitting he does not understand leads directly to the core mechanism of how the mountain is actually defeated.
Which is?
The angel basically tells him that the golden candlestick isn't a physical tool he's supposed to pick up and use. It is a representation of the ultimate source of power.
Oh, right. This brings us to arguably one of the most famous verses in this text, verse 6.
Yes.
The angel says, This is the word of the Lord unto Zerubbabel, saying, Not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord of hosts.
And that verse completely flips the human script on how we solve our most intimidating problems. Mrs. Carl's notes emphasize this beautifully. God's Spirit is working in the background to accomplish what we absolutely cannot do on our own.
So when we rely on our own might, or our own power, meaning like our intellect, our bank accounts, our brute strength, we're using the wrong tools.
Exactly. You're using physical tools for a spiritual mountain.
The notes actually make a specific point to mention that previously, God had commanded the people to be of good courage, right? Like when they stood at the edge of the Jordan River and were told, be courageous.
Right. But reading Miss Carl's note here, it becomes clear that the courage isn't about flexing their own muscles or, psyching themselves up for a fight.
No, the courage is trusting that the Spirit is doing the heavy lifting while they simply stand there.
Yeah, and taking that a step further, this leads to the specific command given to Zerubbabel regarding this great mountain of rubble. The text asks a rhetorical question.
Let me guess, it's about the mountain.
Yes, it asks, Who art thou, O great mountain? Before Zerubbabel thou shalt become a plain.
Wow, just flatten.
Flattened. And then it tells him how he's going to finish the work. He shall bring forth the headstone thereof with shoutings, crying, Grace, grace unto it.
Okay, I have to push back here for a second because I know what you, the listener, might be thinking when you hear that.
Go for it.
Shouting grace, grace at a mountain of literal rubble sounds a whole lot like modern toxic positivity.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Right, like it sounds like standing in front of a completely flat tire on your car on the side of the highway and just shouting, air, air.
That is a great visual.
So what is the actual mechanical difference here between just thinking good thoughts or wishing a problem away and this faithful action that God is commanding?
That is such an important distinction. The difference lies entirely in the source of the authority you are calling upon.
Okay, unpack that.
Toxic positivity is fundamentally rooted in the self, right? It is this modern idea that your own positive vibes, your own internal willpower, will somehow bend reality to your desires.
Oh, I get it. So it's just another form of might and power.
Exactly. But in this biblical text, the shouting of grace, is a profound act of submission. It is a public acknowledgement that the unmerited favor of God, His grace, is the only thing that possesses the authority to level the mountain.
That is a massive distinction. You aren't commanding the mountain with your own power. You are speaking God's reality over the obstacle.
Yeah, you are basically serving the mountain an eviction notice signed by a higher authority.
And this is a major theme throughout the study notes we are analyzing. Mrs. Carl highlights how incredibly important it is for Zerubbabel, and really for all worshipers, to understand that sincere Christian living all by itself avails much.
Yes, that is a huge point in the notes. It isn't just about grand, heroic, cinematic gestures.
No, something as simple as the faithful action of speaking positively in faith is actually commanded by God, and according to the notes, it reaps great and mighty benefits.
The notes say, and I love this exact phrasing, something as small as faithful godly speech can reel in the atmosphere for God to work His mighty works.
Reel in the atmosphere. That is such a vivid image.
It really is.
It is like you are casting a fishing line out into a chaotic, terrifying void, and your faithful speech physically pulls the divine atmosphere into your present reality.
It acts as an anchor point.
Yeah.
It reaps great and mighty benefits, not by human power, but by God's Spirit responding to that faith.
So when you stand in front of your obstacle and speak grace, you are aligning your mouth with what the Spirit is already doing in the background.
Right. You are actively participating in the miracle, even if your specific part in it feels incredibly small.
But actively participating in that miracle is often much easier said than done, because frankly, human nature despises doing the small, unglamorous work. We want to be mighty.
We really do. And this is where we hit verse 10, which honestly acts as the emotional heart of this entire chapter. For who hath despised the day of small things?
I mean, we all do. Human nature absolutely despises the day of small things. We want the movie montage.
Exactly.
We want to skip the sweaty, boring, repetitive parts where nothing seems to be happening and just skip straight to the victory speech at the end.
We crave immediate gratification. But the study notes make it abundantly clear that God almost always begins His work in ways that appear small or completely insignificant to the human eye.
Yeah, the notes point out that prayers begin small, ministries begin small, huge victories, and even faith itself often begin as a tiny, almost invisible seed.
Because those everyday blessings are actually building something spiritually and naturally significant.
I was thinking about this like the compound interest of faith. We live in a modern culture that wants the finished house delivered by Amazon Prime tomorrow
Well,
morning.
that's a perfect analogy.
We want the mountain gone instantly. But this text is telling us to throw a huge party when the wet concrete is poured. It is telling us to celebrate the foundation.
Because the text promises that they, quote, shall rejoice and shall see the plummet in the hand of Zerubbabel.
And a plummet is a plumb line, right?
Yeah, it's a very basic builder's tool used to make sure a wall is straight. So they're going to rejoice just seeing him holding a basic tool and doing the mundane work. Because the promise is that the same hands that laid the small foundation will also finish the house.
Wow, so the joy doesn't just come at the ribbon-cutting ceremony. The joy comes from seeing God's plan unfold over a long period of time.
Exactly.
And what really struck me in Miss Carroll's notes is how she wove in her own musical and meditative reflections to reinforce this specific idea of trusting the small beginnings.
Yeah, the personal application in the notes brings this ancient text right into the present day.
She notes hearing the classic song, Great is Thy Faithfulness, during her prayer time, and singing the hymn, It Pays to Serve Jesus, and quoted the memory verse, Is there anything too hard for the Lord?
Those are the perfect examples of reeling in the atmosphere through small things. I mean, remembering a simple Sunday school lesson from years ago or humming a hymn while you do the dishes.
So don't look like dynamite.
No, they don't look like bulldozers either. But they are the very things that build immense spiritual and natural significance in a person's life over time.
So why is it so important for worshipers to realize that their seemingly mundane, sincere Christian living is actually this powerful force? Like, if God has the ultimate power, why does he want us to focus on these small things instead of just giving us the brute force to smash the mountain ourselves?
That goes straight to the psychology of how humans operate. If God simply handed us the brute force to crush our own mountains, we would immediately rely entirely on ourselves.
Oh, we'd totally take all the credit.
We would take the credit for the victory. And eventually, we would become completely exhausted trying to maintain that level of overwhelming power.
That makes total sense.
Focusing on the small things, the daily obedience, the sincere living, the positive speech, it keeps us tethered to him. It constantly reminds the believer that they are participating in a grace-based system, not a performance-based system.
Okay, so if our job is just laying the bricks, speaking grace to the rubble, and being faithful in the mundane, that still takes energy.
True.
The human spirit tires out. So where does the stamina come from to keep doing that day after day? If we can't use our own limited energy reserves, how do we avoid burning out?
Well, burnout is the inevitable, crushing result of trying to tackle the mountain by your own might and power. But Zechariah's vision provides the exact antidote to burnout.
Yeah, let's look back at the imagery then.
Yeah, let's look at verses 3 and then down to verses 11 through 14. Standing right beside this ornate golden candlestick are 2 olive trees.
Right, one is planted on the right side of the bowl and one is on the left.
And Zechariah is still asking questions here. He says to the angel, what are these 2 olive trees?
And then he notices a very specific mechanical detail, doesn't he?
He does. He sees that there are 2 olive branches on these trees that are connected to 2 golden pipes.
Wait, so they are living trees, but they have pipes.
Yes. And these pipes are actively emptying, quote, golden oil out of themselves directly into the candlestick's bowl.
That is a brilliant, highly functional image. Because in the ancient world, olive oil was the literal physical fuel that kept lamps burning in the temple.
Exactly. If you didn't have a constant supply of oil, your light went out. It was that simple.
So what Zechariah is seeing here is a golden candlestick that does not require a human priest to come by every single morning with a pitcher to refill its oil basin.
Right. It is permanently, organically plumbed into 2 living olive trees that are constantly generating and supplying their own oil.
Hold on, if the living trees are directly piped into the bowl never empties.
Never.
The candlestick never runs out of oil because it is quite literally plugged into the source of the fuel. It is a completely closed-loop system of divine energy.
They are self-emptying trees.
And the candlestick doesn't have to work to pull the oil, it just receives it. So what do these specific trees represent in the vision?
Well, the angel tells Zechariah, these are the 2 anointed ones that stand by the Lord of the whole earth.
And the study notes provide a major revelation on this exact point, right?
They really do. This is Carl's notes, specifically under Thought 14c, identify exactly what these two olive trees represent for the believer today, backing it up with scriptural concepts.
Which are?
They are the Word and the Spirit of God.
The Word and the Spirit. Wow. That changes the entire dynamic of the vision.
It really does. The Word of God, meaning the Scriptures, the historical promises, the foundational truths, and the Spirit of God, the active, living presence and power.
These are the two anointed ones.
Yes. They stand by the Lord of the whole earth, and they act as the endless, self-emptying source of golden oil that fuels every single thing a believer attempts to do.
I want to make sure I fully grasp the mechanics of this metaphor. It is kind of like trying to power a massive supercomputer.
Okay, I like where this is going.
If you are running it on a tiny internal battery, which is like your own might and power, it is going to die in 10 minutes.
Right.
But if that computer is plugged directly into the main power grid, it can run forever. And not because the computer itself is so powerful, but because the grid it is connected to has infinite energy.
That is the perfect modern analogy. It renders our own personal power entirely secondary.
It totally does.
Just think about the golden candlestick in the vision. It isn't trying really hard to produce light. It isn't straining its metal or stressing out.
It's just sitting there.
It is simply receiving the golden oil from the living olive trees, and the bright light is just the natural, effortless byproduct of that connection.
That completely eliminates the crushing pressure we put on ourselves.
It really does.
Mhm.
When you realize that sincere Christian living avails much because you are continually supplied by this endless fuel, your entire approach to the mountain changes.
So you do not have to psych yourself up or muster up the emotional energy to shout, "Grace, grace," to your obstacle.
No, you just have to ensure you stay connected to the Word and the Spirit. You read the biblical texts, you pray those seemingly small prayers, you sing those older hymns like, "Holy, Holy, Holy," or "Great is Thy Faithfulness."
And as you do, that golden oil flows from the trees through the pipes and into you.
Exactly. It equips you to stand in front of the mountain without collapsing from exhaustion.
That makes so much sense of that earlier note about how God wants us to know that the small ways of everyday blessings are actually building something massive.
Yes, the small ways.
Like reading a scripture on your phone, remembering a Sunday school lesson from Sis Crystal, deciding to speak a positive word instead of complaining. Instead of complaining, you speak grace. Those actions are the golden pipes.
That is the physical mechanism of how the oil gets from the infinite tree into your personal bowl.
And that is precisely why we cannot ever despise the day of small things.
Right. Because a golden pipe might seem incredibly small and fragile compared to a towering mountain of rubble. But if that small pipe is connected to an infinite reservoir of golden oil, it becomes the most powerful thing in the world.
The small things are the conduits for the infinite.
Perfectly said.
Let's synthesize this incredible journey we've been on through these study notes. We started by looking at a massive, intimidating mountain.
The kind of obstacle that makes you freeze up in terror and immediately want to reach for a bulldozer or a massive bank loan or some other form of human brute force.
But we learned that the mountain is not leveled by our own might or our own power. It is leveled by God's Spirit actively working in the unseen background.
And we discovered the immense, counterintuitive power of small beginnings.
Right. We found out that trusting the long process, celebrating the laying of the foundation, and engaging in sincere Christian living, especially by actively speaking positive, faithful words of grace over our obstacles, that actually reels in the atmosphere for God to perform his miracles.
And finally, we uncovered the secret to sustaining this difficult lifestyle without burning out. We do not have to generate our own emotional or spiritual fuel.
We are continually supplied by the endless golden oil of the two olive trees, which represent the Word and the Spirit of God.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Mr. Carl's notes on Zechariah, we really want to speak directly to you, the listener, about your own mountains.
Absolutely.
We want to remind you that your sincere efforts today deeply matter. Your small, quiet prayers matter.
Yes, they do.
Those seemingly insignificant, faithful words you choose to speak over your chaotic family situation, your stressful workplace, or your own internal struggles, they are actively reeling in the divine atmosphere for God to work.
You absolutely do not have to be the biggest, the loudest, the wealthiest, or the most powerful person in the room to see a mountain move out of your way.
You just have to be plugged into the right source of fuel.
You just need to let the Word and the Spirit empty that golden oil into your life through those small daily pipes. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought built right out of this ancient text.
Oh, this is a good one.
The scripture notes in verse 10 that the eyes of the Lord run to and fro through the whole earth, and that they actually rejoice to see these small beginnings.
They aren't looking for finished skyscrapers?
No, they are actively looking for people simply holding that basic builder's plummet, ready to start small.
The profound takeaway is that he is actively scanning the earth, looking for the small, faithful things to bless.
So think deeply about your own life right now as you go about your day. The bulldozer mentality hasn't worked. The brute force approach just left you exhausted and burnt out.
So what is that one small thing in your life right now?
A tiny, mundane project you've been putting off because it doesn't feel grand enough. A quiet prayer you stopped praying because it felt useless. A simple word of grace you've hesitated to speak to someone who frustrated you. What is that one small thing you've been despising or ignoring, which might actually be the very foundation of a miracle?